Did you know that the book of Daniel proves that modern Judaism is yet again a false religion? There are countless prophecies of the Messiah that Jesus fulfilled, but Daniel 9 has to be one of the most astonishing ones that is quite impossible to refute from the rabbinic Jewish side. Yet for some reason they still try, but fail miserably. So I'd like to do a 6-part series going over all of their refutations and why it proves that Judaism is false. And before any of my brother and sisters in ethnicity, blood, and no longer religion decide to accuse me of using a corrupted Christian translation, which doesn't exist, I will be only reading from the JPS Hebrew English Tanakh from the Jewish Publication Society. This prophecy is found in Daniel 9:24 through 27.
70 weeks have been decreed for your people in your holy city until the measure of transgression is filled and that of sin complete, until iniquity is expiated and the eternal righteousness ushered in, and prophetic vision ratified, and the Holy of Holies anointed. You must know and understand from the issuance of the word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the time of the anointed leader is 7 weeks, and for 62 weeks it will be rebuilt, but in a time of distress. And after those 62 weeks the anointed one will disappear and vanish. The army of a leader who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, but its end will come through a flood. Desolation is decreed until the end of war. During 1 week he will make a firm covenant with many. For half a week he will put a stop to the sacrifice and the meal offering. At the corner of the altar will be an appalling abomination until the decreed destruction will be poured down upon the appalling thing.
The Hebrew word used for week here is shavua, which literally means 7. In prophecies, a week often represents 7 years. So since 70 times 7 equals 490, this prophecy refers to a period of 490 years. Now this is divided into 3 different sections. 7 weeks, aka 49 years, to rebuild Jerusalem. 62 weeks equals 434 years leading to the Messiah. And 1 final week equaling 7 years of the Messiah's ministry and ultimately death. Now for the rest of this section, I'm going to need you to be very patient with my pronunciation. This timeline begins with Artaxerxes' decree in 457 BC. This is found in Ezra 7:11 through 26. Now, some scholars also argue that this could be referring to Cyrus's decree, which interestingly can also line up, but it's a bit more complicated. Cyrus's decree only allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem and start rebuilding, but Artaxerxes' decree is arguably the only decree that held the actual legal and political power necessary to fulfill this prophecy, because this decree actually allowed for the restoration of Jewish governance in Jerusalem. It didn't just allow them to return. To finally get to the point, this timeline lines up perfectly with Jesus' life and ministry. And if you want to use Cyrus's decree, it actually lines up perfectly with the year that Jesus was crucified. Excuse my pronunciation, but there's an issue with Ptolemy's calendar, a historical calendar, when looking at that decree. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to stick with Artaxerxes, found in Ezra chapter 7, and the math lines up perfectly. No other historical figure fits, yet many Jews will try to argue this. Other Jews will accept that the timeline actually does line up, but they make other excuses to get their way around it. So in the next 6 videos, I'm going to be breaking down the major rabbinic objections to this prophecy and Jesus' fulfillment of it, and subsequently proving that Jesus is the only logical and valid interpretation to this prophecy. This video is part 2 in my 7-part series of why Daniel 9 proves that modern Judaism is false. From this point on, I'm going to be presenting and refuting common rabbinic objections to Jesus' fulfillment of this prophecy. Some rabbis and Jews argue that this prophecy is not about the Messiah, but actually just some other anointed one, like a government figure or a high priest. But let's look at what Daniel really says. In Daniel 9:24 through 26, the prophecy says that the anointed one will end sin, make atonement for iniquity, and bring everlasting righteousness. This language obviously goes far beyond what any king, priest, or government figure ever did. While figures like Rashi view this text to refer to an anointed one, like Cyrus, the king of Persia, other early influential rabbinic figures actually directly interpret this passage to be referring to a messianic figure. Maimonides, or Rambam, links this to a messianic figure. In his letter to Yemen, he actually writes that this prophecy is referring to the timeline of the Messiah's coming, interpreting Daniel's 70 weeks as a countdown to the ultimate restoration of Israel, even though the sages warned against calculating it too precisely. Additionally, Saadia Gaon saw Daniel 9 as a genuine prophecy of the Messianic era as well, believing that it foretold Israel's final redemption not just a return from Babylon. So within traditional Judaism, Daniel 9 absolutely was viewed as a messianic prophecy by many influential figures. It has been long recognized as pointing to the messianic age. Daniel 9:26 reads, "And after those 62 weeks, the anointed one will disappear and vanish. The army of a leader who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, but its end will come through a flood. Desolation is decreed until the end of war." So Daniel clearly says that the anointed one will come before the destruction of the temple. If you count the prophetic 70 weeks, which I discussed in part 1, 490 years from the decree of Artaxerxes in 457 BCE, you reach around 27 CE for the appearance of the anointed one discussed in Daniel 9, and the temple's destruction in 70 AD or CE fits right on this schedule. This makes Daniel 9 one of the clearest prophecies that aligns with Jesus' life, death, and resurrection that simply cannot be applied to any other figure. And this boils down to the simple fact, the Anointed One has to bring righteousness, and the Anointed One must appear before the temple falls. This obviously refers to Jesus, and Jews cannot come up with a historical figure that possibly fits better.